With a loud clang, the front door swung open violently. A brash woman barged into my home, her piercing voice echoing through the hall. "I can't believe someone like you stole my man. I'm 3 months pregnant with your husband's child. Get out of here now." Her sudden harsh words froze me in place. She claimed to be my husband's mistress and boldly declared her presence in my home. The flashy blonde woman had unnaturally bright lipstick and a twisted smile, speaking with a victorious tone. "Look at you. With that tacky outfit, it's no wonder he chose me over you." Her words hit like daggers as she laughed haughtily, her voice echoing in my mind. That laughter brought back memories of a painful time when I had lost confidence as a wife and a woman. Years ago, I had endured humiliation. My ex-husband's cold stares and people's mocking words lingered in my memory. I was overwhelmed by regret and confusion, my heart a whirlwind of complex emotions. Yet I knew that if I let her words defeat me, I would be unable to move forward. The blonde woman placed her hand on her stomach with a triumphant look, as if staking her claim. My chest tightened and I fought back the scream rising in my throat. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my trembling voice and slowly opened my mouth. "Excuse me," I began. "My name is Sarah. I'm 36 years old and the CEO of my company. I inherited a small business from my father in my mid-20s and have worked tirelessly to sustain it ever since. From the beginning, I faced immense pressure as a leader and during the isolation of my role. In those early days, I often cried in private, unable to connect with the senior executives who had worked under my father. Over time, I gradually earned the trust of my employees and finally felt a sense of belonging. I suppressed my personal life and emotions, dedicating myself solely to protecting the company. As a result, I had no romantic relationships or gossip-worthy tales, which worried those around me. Despite their concerns, I poured everything into my role as a businesswoman. Secretly, though, I longed for a happy family, something I had never experienced. My mother passed away when I was young, and my father, always busy, entrusted my care to my grandmother. Because of this, I rarely spent time with my father and grew up starved for parental affection. My father barely spoke to me, and his rare interactions felt distant and stern. Even as I grew older, our relationship remained cold, leaving me feeling frightened of him as a child. However, everything changed when my father fell ill unexpectedly. By the time we discovered his illness, it was too late. He passed away after 6 months of being bedridden. During those 6 months, despite his condition, we shared conversations that healed old wounds. "I'm truly sorry for making you feel lonely, Sarah. My only wish is for you to be happy." His words brought me immense joy, melting years of bitterness. The time spent caring for my father became a cherished memory, giving me the strength to move forward. After my father's passing, I poured myself into managing the company he had built, determined to fulfill his dream for my happiness. Then one day, Tom entered my life as a new hire at the company. His cheerful demeanor and calming presence quickly endeared him to everyone around him. At first, he didn't realize I was the CEO, addressing me casually. "Oh, I didn't know you were the boss. Sorry about that." "It's fine," I replied with a smile. "Please, don't change the way you talk to me." His genuine laughter and easygoing personality brought a sense of lightness into my life, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Over time, we grew closer, and Tom became a source of comfort. "Sarah, you always seem so tense. Let me be the person who helps you relax." His sincerity stirred something in me, and I began to think, maybe I can have the warm, happy family I've always dreamed of. However, not everyone around me was supportive of our relationship. "Sarah, are you sure about this? Marrying Tom might not be the best decision." Against their advice, I married him, believing I had finally found happiness. But it wasn't long before cracks in our relationship began to show. One day, an envelope addressed to Tom arrived at the office. The sender was a woman whose name I didn't recognize. A sense of unease crept into my chest as I handed it to him that evening. "Tom, this letter was addressed to you at the office. Do you know who it's from?" He hesitated for a moment, his expression briefly startled before he dismissed my concerns. "Oh, it's nothing. Probably a misunderstanding from a hostess I met once. Don't worry about it." He tore up the letter in front of me, and although I wanted to believe him, doubt lingered. Over time, unsettling incidents began to occur, anonymous messages, a woman waiting outside the office, and whispers among staff. One evening, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Standing at the door was a young blonde woman with a smug expression. "Open the door. We need to talk." Her demeaning tone made me hesitate, but eventually I unlatched the chain and opened the door partially. What's taking so long? Let me in already. Against my better judgment, I allowed her into my home, hoping to avoid creating a scene in front of the neighbors. Once inside, she wasted no time asserting herself. I'm pregnant with Tom's child. You need to leave this house because I'm moving in. Her audacity left me momentarily speechless, but I composed myself and responded calmly. You've been deceived. Let me explain the truth to you. My words caught her off guard, and for the first time, she hesitated. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice laced with doubt. Tom and I divorced 2 years ago. This house belongs to me, and I have no connection to him anymore. Her face twisted in confusion and disbelief. That's not true. He told me you wouldn't give him a divorce, and that's why we couldn't be together. I sighed, realizing she had been fed the same lies I had once believed. If you don't believe me, here's his current address. Take it up with him. With that, she stormed out of my house, her confidence shattered. As the door closed behind her, silence filled the room. I collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down my face. Not from anger, but from bittersweet relief. Sitting there on the floor, I thought back to my tumultuous marriage and the painful events that followed. After my divorce from Tom, I had worked tirelessly to rebuild my company and regain the trust of my employees. The betrayal I experienced had nearly broken me, but it also taught me the importance of resilience and self-worth. When the blonde woman appeared at my door, it felt like a ghost from my past had come back to haunt me. But this time, I refused to let it consume me. Over the next few weeks, I began receiving harassing messages and anonymous phone calls. One morning, my assistant approached me with a concerned look, holding her phone out. Sarah, the company's website is receiving negative reviews. I thought you should see this. On the screen were anonymous posts accusing me of discrimination and other baseless claims. My stomach churned as I read the words, but I knew I couldn't ignore the situation. I immediately contacted my lawyer and a public relations expert to address the defamatory comments and protect the company's reputation. Meanwhile, I noticed someone following me on my way home, a shadowy figure lingering just far enough to make me feel uneasy. My nights were sleepless, plagued by the fear of being watched or targeted again. Then one day, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside were pages upon pages of hateful accusations, many containing private information no stranger should know. A chill ran down my spine as I realized just how far this person was willing to go. I brought the evidence to my lawyer, who assured me that we would take every legal measure necessary to stop the harassment. As the situation escalated, I received an unexpected phone call from Emma's lawyer. Sarah, I believe we have information that might help you. Could you meet us at our office? Curious and hopeful, I agreed to the meeting and brought my own legal counsel with me. At the office, Emma greeted me with a warm but serious expression. Sarah, thank you for coming. I think it's time we work together to put an end to this once and for all. She began explaining how Tom's actions had confused to wreak havoc in her life as well. Even after he married me, Tom's infidelity didn't stop, and now I've discovered he's been involved in fraudulent schemes to pay off his debts. Emma laid out a series of documents detailing Tom's activities, including evidence of his collaboration with a blonde woman. It appears Tom and his woman have been targeting multiple victims in a marriage fraud scheme. My heart sank as I realized the extent of his deceit, but at the same time, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Together, Emma and I decided to file a lawsuit against Tom and his accomplice, seeking justice for ourselves and their other victims. As the case unfolded, more victims came forward, each with their own stories of betrayal and loss. The trial was long and grueling, but eventually the truth came to light. Tom is sentenced to 4 years in prison for fraud, and his accomplice will serve a suspended sentence with probation. Hearing the verdict, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. While justice had been served, I knew this wasn't just about punishing Tom. It was about reclaiming our lives and moving forward. In the weeks following the trial, I focused on rebuilding the company's image and restoring trust with our clients and employees. I also began holding regular open forums with my team, creating a culture of transparency and collaboration. One day, Emma invited me out for tea, and we reflected on how far we had come. If it weren't for everything we went through, I would have never met you. Strange how life works, isn't it? Her words made me smile, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely at peace. As the months passed, the shadows of the past began to fade, replaced by a deep appreciation for the present. I dedicated myself to creating a company culture that prioritized not just success, but also the well-being of every employee. One day, a young employee approached me with an unexpected suggestion. "Sarah, why don't we hold a company retreat? It could be a great way to bring everyone together and reflect on how far we've come." Inspired by the idea, I arranged a retreat at a quiet seaside location, a nod to the peace I had found during my own trip to my father's hometown. During the retreat, I shared my story with my team, not as their CEO, but as someone who had faced adversity and come out stronger. Their response was overwhelming, with many expressing gratitude for my honesty and openness. Thank you for sharing this with us. It reminds me that even in tough times, there's always hope. These moments of connection reinforced my belief in the power of vulnerability and authenticity. Back in the office, the energy was palpable. Our team was united in a way it hadn't been before. Meanwhile, Emma and I stayed in touch, supporting each other as we continued to rebuild our lives. One day, she sent me a photo of her young child holding a sign that read, "Thank you, Aunt Sarah." Tears welled up as I realized how much we had both grown from the pain we endured. On the second anniversary of the trial, I visited the seaside town where my father was buried. Standing at his grave, I whispered, "Dad, I finally found my happiness. Thank you for always believing in me." The wind carried my words, and I felt his presence, as if he were smiling down at me. On my way back to the city, I reflected on everything I had learned, the value of resilience, the importance of trust, and the power of forgiveness. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. Back at the office, my employees greeted me warmly, their smiles reminding me of the community we had built together. "Welcome back, Sarah. We missed you." Their energy was infectious, and I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Over the next few months, the company continued to thrive, and I found myself mentoring others who were navigating their own struggles. One of them, a young entrepreneur named Emily, reminded me of myself in my early days, full of dreams but unsure of our path. "Sarah, how do you stay strong when everything feels like it's falling apart?" "Strength isn't about never failing, Emily. It's about finding the courage to stand back up every time you do." Her determination reignited my own passion for building not just a successful business, but a legacy of resilience and integrity. As I walked through the bustling office one evening, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. The challenges I faced, the pain I endured, and the lessons I learned had shaped me into the leader and person I was today. And for that, I was grateful. Married for 20 years, I had plenty of complaints, but I assumed that was normal for a long married couple. I thought we had a bond, like teammates under the same roof, even if it wasn't deep love. But apparently, I was the only one who thought that way. My husband, Ethan, pushed the care of his parents entirely onto me while secretly enjoying an affair for years. My mother-in-law, Gemma, neglected by her own son, relied solely on me. The stress I felt was immense. Why did everything fall on me? My own parents passed away without my husband even visiting them in the hospital. That was it. I'd had enough. When I finally snapped and said so, my mother-in-law paused briefly before returning to her usual sharp tone. "A crude and ugly daughter-in-law like you? Fine, let's cut ties. No inheritance for you." "That's fine by me. Stay well," I said. Without a glance back, I walked away from her protests. If this is what she wants, so be it. Who should take the primary responsibility when in-laws need care? In this era of gender equality, caregiving responsibilities still often fall on women. Parenting is a clear example, with men rarely taking parental leave. And caregiving for elderly parents follows the same pattern. My husband, claiming his job kept him too busy, left everything to me. Generational expectations also play a role. Older generations often assume daughters-in-law will handle caregiving. My name is Rebecca Tanner, and I'm 47. I've been grappling with the challenges of caring for my in-laws. My family consists of my husband, Ethan, our daughter, Sarah, and me. Sarah recently graduated from a community college and has just started living on her own. Being an only child, Sarah was particularly spoiled growing up, and even as an adult, she remains somewhat entitled. Despite her job being close enough to commute from home, Sarah insisted on living alone in a stylish, secure apartment with amenities. I rejected her extravagant demands, as they seemed unnecessary for someone just starting out. Realizing she wouldn't get her way with me, she turned to her father, Ethan, for support. Ethan had been uninvolved in parenting from the start, claiming he didn't know how to handle a girl. Even as Sarah grew up, Ethan remained hands-off. When Sarah broke curfew or stole money from my wallet, Ethan refused to scold her, fearing she might dislike him. This leniency led Sarah to take advantage of him, knowing he wouldn't set boundaries. By high school, Sarah's spending habits were out of control. She brought expensive makeup to school, prompting her teachers to call her out. Parenting is always challenging, but in my case, Ethan felt more like an obstacle than a partner. When Sarah moved out, the stress finally lessened. While her lifestyle was a financial strain, Ethan agreed to cover her expenses, so I reluctantly accepted it. Just as I thought I could regain some control over my life, news came that Ethan's father had broken his leg. Ethan's father was a strict and rigid man, unwilling to let others disrupt his routines. Even when Sarah was little, visiting his house during holidays was challenging due to his strict schedule. Meals, baths, and walks were all meticulously timed, and Sarah, being a child, couldn't keep up, which irritated him. After that experience, I refused to visit his house again. Ethan, who also disliked conforming to his father's rules, didn't protest. While Ethan's mother occasionally visited us out of loneliness, 50 years passed without any real interaction with his father. When Ethan's father got injured, I assumed his wife would care for him, so I didn't give it much thought. Ethan seemed to think the same. But then Ethan received a call from his father's, something that was highly unusual. Concerned, I watched Ethan repeatedly say, "I understand. I'll visit soon." When the call ended, Ethan turned to me with troubling news. "Mom's memory is getting bad. She can't properly take care of Dad." "Memory issues? What do you mean?" "She forgets where the medications and bandages are. She even forgets doctor's appointments. And she doesn't realize she's forgetting." I recalled watching a health program about memory loss. It said forgetting things isn't unusual, but being unable to recall them at all could indicate dementia. Ethan's mother had always been outspoken and sharp-witted, a gossip enthusiast who loved discussing celebrity news. Though I found her nosy and unpleasant, the possibility of her developing dementia made me feel sympathy for her. Ethan and I visited his parents the following weekend. The house was messier than I expected, and Ethan's mother was far from quiet or confused. She was talkative, irritable, and incoherent. Her erratic behavior was exhausting to follow. While aging naturally causes some forgetfulness, the sudden onset of these symptoms worried me. I thought if she is sick, we need to treat her with patience and understanding. But I quickly learned how naive that sentiment was. "So, you finally decided to show up, Rebecca. Took you long enough. You should have been here the day he got hurt." "Excuse me? I had no idea you were struggling." I had sent money as a gesture of support, so I didn't expect to be scolded. "A proper daughter-in-law takes care of her in-laws. But fine, you're here now. Start taking care of him properly from today." I was stunned by her demand and looked at Ethan, hoping for support. Ethan avoided my gaze, leaving me to deal with everything alone. Caregiving shouldn't automatically fall on the wife just because she's the wife. But Ethan's family held on to these outdated beliefs, and I felt trapped. My main concern wasn't Ethan's father's care, it was his mother's deteriorating state. A broken bone heals, but if she truly had dementia, the situation would only worsen. "I'll handle your father's care. Can you take your mother to see a doctor?" "What if she refuses? She might get upset." "Just tell her it's for a health checkup. Make something up if you have to." "But dementia isn't curable, right? What's the point?" "It's not about curing her, it's about slowing its progression and learning how to manage it." Ethan clearly didn't want the responsibility. I had no choice but to step in, enduring his mother's sharp tongue while managing his father's care. I adjusted my work schedule, visiting their home after my shifts. I cooked, cleaned, and organized the house while Ethan's mother constantly criticized my efforts. Ethan's father, thankfully, didn't demand much. His silence was a small relief in an otherwise overwhelming situation. Their house was 30 minutes away by car or nearly an hour via public transit. Ethan's father, once independent and stubborn, had grown increasingly frail after his injury. He also developed high blood pressure, something likely undiagnosed for years. Despite doctors' advice for better diet and rehabilitation, he was resistant to change. His inactivity led to muscle atrophy, worsening his condition. Over time, his mobility decreased, and he became almost entirely bedridden. This lack of independence caused tension between him and his wife, which she redirected at me. I started receiving home aid support 3 times a week to help with household tasks. Ethan's mother hated the idea of outsiders helping, claiming it made her look lazy. Her pride prevented her from accepting help, but she didn't want to do the work herself either. Ethan occasionally visited on weekends for grocery runs, and his mother doted on him like a perfect hostess. When I asked Ethan to visit more often, his response was dismissive. "What about my weekends? This is your job, not mine." "What about my weekends? Who decided this was my responsibility?" Ethan never offered thanks or even acknowledged the effort I was putting in. Months passed, and Ethan's father's condition deteriorated further. His lack of mobility and mental clarity worsened, and eventually he passed away. The caregiving I had juggled on top of my job came to an abrupt end. With Ethan's father gone, his mother became my sole responsibility. I realized his father had been a stabilizing force, keeping her verbal abuse somewhat in check. If you had taken better care of him, he would still be alive. It's your fault he's gone. I knew her accusations were baseless, but hearing them daily wore me down. Her forgetfulness worsened, especially regarding her belongings, which led to constant accusations of theft against me. When I confronted Ethan about her behavior, his response was infuriating. "She's sick. Don't take it personally." That's easy to say when you're not the one facing it every day. Meanwhile, Ethan spent his nights working late, which I discovered was a cover for his drinking and infidelity. The smell of perfume and lipstick stains on his shirts confirmed my suspicions. Despite his own failures, Ethan had the audacity to lecture me. "Be more patient with her. Smile more. Your attitude could make a difference." How dare he tell me to smile when he couldn't even lift a finger to help? Desperate to reduce my stress, I made subtle efforts to get his mother to a doctor. "You're so vibrant, Mom. Let's go for a walk near that lovely hospital garden." Eventually, I succeeded in getting her evaluated. The doctor confirmed early-stage dementia and gave us strategies to manage her condition. I took over her medication schedule, ensuring she didn't miss doses. To handle her care, I reduced my work hours, which my manager graciously accommodated. Despite the burden, my workplace remained my only solace. Balancing part-time work with caregiving became my new normal. My savings were drained by caregiving expenses, but at least my workplace was supportive. I tried discussing Ethan's mother's condition with him, urging him to spend more time with her. "This is a progressive disease. You'll regret not being there for her." Ethan's response was silence. Instead of engaging, he avoided the conversation entirely. One day I returned home from work to find Ethan's belongings gone. His clothes, laptop, and even the cash I had saved for emergencies had disappeared. Panicked, I called his office, only to learn he had taken a personal day. It was clear. He had left. The betrayal wasn't shocking. I had long suspected he might leave. What hurt was that he abandoned both me and his mother. Ethan's mother noticed the change almost immediately. "Where's Ethan? Why hasn't he come home?" She wandered the house, looking for him like a lost cat searching for its owner. Despite all I had done for her, her affection was reserved only for Ethan. "He's probably with that other woman. I always knew he wanted to remarry." "You knew about the affair?" "Of course. He told me she was younger and prettier." Her nonchalance stunned me. For years, I thought we were a team bound by the shared experiences of marriage and family. But clearly, Ethan saw our relationship differently. His mother's harsh words and his betrayal left me questioning my worth. Yet a small voice inside reminded me I deserved better. That evening, I reached my breaking point. "I'm done. I can't carry this burden alone anymore." "You're leaving? What about me?" "Your son left you too. I've been holding everything together, but I can't anymore." Her panic was immediate, but my resolve didn't waver. "You can't just abandon me. It's your job as the daughter-in-law." "My job? Since when? You've done nothing but criticize me. You don't even like me." Her indignation turned to desperation. "Wait, let's talk about this. You told me you didn't want me around. I'm giving you what you wanted. I packed my things, ignoring her pleas. I left her with clear instructions for the home aides and contacted the local senior services. As I stepped out the door, she shouted behind me, "You'll regret this!" But her words held no power anymore. A few days later, Ethan called me. "Where are you? Mom says you abandoned her." "I've done more than my fair share. Your mother's care is your responsibility now." "But she needs you." "She needs her son. You've avoided this long enough." Ethan tried guilt-tripping me, but I stood firm. I had spent years sacrificing my happiness, health, and finances for a family that didn't appreciate me. Now, it was my turn to live. I returned to full-time work, rented my own apartment, and began rebuilding my life. The freedom was exhilarating. Weekends were no longer filled with errands or caregiving. I spent my time exploring new hobbies, dining out with friends, and even traveling alone. For the first time in decades, I felt truly alive. Ethan, meanwhile, struggled under the weight of his responsibilities. His mother's demands overwhelmed him, and his once carefree life became a nightmare. The karma was undeniable. As for me, I had no intention of looking back. The chapter with Ethan and his family was finally closed. Ethan's desperate messages became more frequent over the weeks. "Mom's out of control. She won't stop yelling at me. She refuses to bathe without someone's help, and I don't know what to do. Can you just come back and help? I'll even pay you. You should have thought about this before abandoning your family." I didn't respond to his other messages. For years, I had sacrificed everything for people who never valued me. Now, they would have to figure it out on their own. Ethan's life spiraled further into chaos. His mother's hoarding worsened, filling their home with garbage and a foul stench. SOS texts and voicemail after voicemail showed his growing desperation. "Mom won't listen to me. She's making the house unlivable. I can't do this alone." His suffering felt like poetic justice, though I took no joy in it. He had never lifted a finger to help me, yet now expected my assistance when things got tough. My only focus was rebuilding my life. I reconnected with old friends, found joy in small moments, and rediscovered my passions. Meanwhile, Ethan's burdens multiplied. Sarah, our daughter, unexpectedly moved back in with him after learning she was pregnant. She was shocked to find herself sharing the house with her grandmother, whose erratic behavior made living there unbearable. "Dad, you have to do something. Grandma's impossible to live with." Ethan was stuck between caring for his ailing mother and managing Sarah's sudden arrival. Sarah, who had always been spoiled and dependent, demanded that Ethan find a solution. "I'm having a baby. You need to make space for me and the baby." "What do you want me to do?" "Put Grandma in a nursing home." Ethan's efforts to juggle both relationships were futile. Eventually, Sarah became so frustrated that she moved out again, taking her newborn to live with friends. Ethan's girlfriend, meanwhile, had left him after realizing he couldn't provide her with the carefree life she wanted. Now he was entirely alone, facing the consequences of his choices. The weight of caring for his mother became unbearable for him. He eventually sent me one last desperate plea. "I can't handle this anymore. Can we split the cost to put Mom in a facility?" "After everything, you still think I owe you something?" I ignored his message. Ethan had to learn to take responsibility for his actions. I couldn't save him from the life he had created. As for me, my life had blossomed in ways I never imagined. I had moved into a cozy apartment and built a life filled with independence and joy. Weekends were mine again, spent traveling, reading, or simply enjoying the peace of my own company. For years, I thought I had lost myself in my marriage and family, but now I realized I had found something greater: freedom.
Ignored and unwanted during New Year's, when my husband's hometown reunion turned into a shocking emergency.
It wasn't the cold words from John's childhood friend that hurt the most. It was John's silence, his decision not to stand up for me as if I wasn't worth defending. "Oh, I see. I'll head back then." I said it calmly, standing up from my seat. But inside, I was breaking. I wanted him to stop me, to say something, anything. This was supposed to be a special New Year's, my first time celebrating with John's family in his hometown. I had hoped for warmth, for acceptance. I had hoped to feel like I belonged. But at the reunion, I was just a spectator, invisible in John's shadow. He was lost in the joy of old friends, while I felt more alone than I ever had in a crowded room. No one could have prepared me for what happened next. And I didn't realize it then, but that night would change everything. My name is Emma. I live in New York City now, but I grew up in a small town. John, my husband, grew up there too. That's where we met, though back then, we barely knew each other. In high school, John was popular. He was always surrounded by friends, always the life of the party. I was the opposite. Quiet, reserved. We connected years later in New York. It was during orientation at my first job. Oh, wait a minute. Did you go to Ridgeview High School? Yes, I did. Did you? No way. What class were you in? 12C. You? 12D. We were practically neighbors. I laughed at his excitement. I felt a surprising sense of connection. I think I remember you. You were always reading in the hallway, right? I blushed, caught off guard that someone like him would even notice me. Talking about our hometown made the conversation flow easily. We clicked. Quickly. Before I knew it, we were dating. And then, we were married. John's family welcomed me with open arms, especially his mother, Linda. Emma, you're so wonderful. I knew John would pick someone amazing. Thank you, Linda. I'm so lucky to have all of you. Linda treated me like her own daughter. Her warmth made me feel at home in their family. Every visit, she'd make my favorite dishes. She remembered little details about what I liked. This year's New Year's visit felt no different. Until John brought up the reunion. Emma, you should come to the reunion with me. Oh, are you sure? Wouldn't it be better if you went alone? No way. Everyone's bringing their spouses. I'd look weird going solo. Oh, I don't know. I might not have much to talk about. They're your friends. Don't worry. They're super nice. You'll love them. Plus, we can talk about the hometown. It'll be fun. His enthusiasm was contagious, but a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. I agreed anyway. The days before the reunion were a blur of John staying out late with his friends. He'd come home tipsy, laughing about old memories. One night, I overheard him and Linda talking about someone named Mary. Mary married a doctor, didn't she? After high school? Yeah, she did. She was so gorgeous back then. Every guy had a crush on her. His eyes lit up with nostalgia. My chest tightened. Mary had been the queen of our high school. Beautiful, popular, untouchable. Memories of sitting quietly in class while Mary basked in attention flooded back to me. Once she'd spoken to me. Just once. Her words, meant as casual teasing, had left a scar. You always look so bored. Don't you have any friends? Her entourage had laughed. I had lowered my gaze, my face burning. That encounter had cemented my belief that we were from completely different worlds. And now, years later, she was about to be part of my world again. The day of the reunion arrived. John was practically bouncing with excitement as we got ready. Oh, I can't wait to see everyone. It's going to be amazing. I tried to match his energy, but anxiety churned inside me. What if I didn't fit in? What if I embarrassed him? At the venue, the room was filled with laughter and chatter. Old friends embraced, reminiscing with ease. I felt out of place in my simple dress as I looked around at the polished and stylish crowd. Come on, Emma. Let's say hi to everyone. John led me to a group of his friends, all beaming as they reunited. Guys, this is my wife, Emma. A few Polite nods and smiles greeted me before they launched into high school stories. I stood there silent, trying to keep a polite smile as they laughed at inside jokes. I didn't belong. Then the room hushed. All eyes turned to the entrance. Mary had arrived. She was radiant in a red dress that hugged her figure. Her golden bracelet glinted under the lights, and her confidence filled the room. "Hi, everyone. Long time no see." John immediately broke away to greet her. "Mary, wow. You look incredible." "Oh, John. Still the charmer, I see." I trailed behind as they exchanged warm smiles and shared laughs. "And who's this?" "This is my wife, Emma. Do you remember her?" Sorry, I don't think so." Her disinterest cut deep. "You know, Emma was always reading in the corner during high school." "Oh, right. The quiet one." Her tone was casual, but her words stung. John didn't notice, continuing to chat with Mary, completely forgetting I was there. The more they laughed and reminisced, the smaller I felt. "John, you've changed a lot. I mean, settling down must have been quite the decision for you." The laughter that followed her comment felt directed at me. I couldn't take it anymore. "I think I'm going to head out." "What? Why?" "I'm tired. Enjoy your reunion." Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked out into the cold night air. Tears blurred my vision as I hailed a cab. My chest felt heavy with humiliation and sadness. Back at John's parents' house, I sank into the couch, overwhelmed by the night's events. "Emma? You're back already? Is everything okay?" "I'm fine, Linda. Just tired." But Linda's gentle concern unraveled me. "It's not fine. The reunion was awful. John ignored me, and Mary made me feel like I didn't belong." "Mary? What did she say?" "She acted like I was invisible, like John had married beneath him." "Oh, that's unacceptable. You deserve better, Emma. I'll be speaking to John about this." "No, please. This is between me and him." Linda nodded, though her disapproval was clear. Later that night, John returned, looking guilty. "Emma, you left so suddenly. Do you even realize how you treated me tonight? You ignored me. You let Mary walk all over me." I didn't mean to. I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough. I need to know you're on my side." His apology felt hollow, and I turned away, too hurt to continue the conversation. The days that followed were tense and quiet. I spent most of my time in the guest room, avoiding unnecessary interaction with John. Linda was understanding, giving me space, but offering kind gestures, tea, small talk, a reassuring pat on the shoulder. John, on the other hand, seemed unsure of how to approach me. He hovered around, clearly struggling with guilt, but I wasn't ready to have the conversation he was waiting for. On the third morning, as I packed my suitcase to return to New York, there was a knock on the door. "Emma, can I come in?" Sure." He stepped in, his expression somber and his hands tucked into his pockets. "Emma, I know I messed up. Can we talk?" "Talk, John. I'm listening." He sat on the edge of the bed, looking down at his hands. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the reunion, about Mary, about how I made you feel. And you're right. I treated you terribly and I didn't stand up for you. I let the past get in the way of the present and I hurt you in the process." His words sounded sincere, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down. "You didn't just hurt me, John. You made me feel invisible. Do you know how hard it was to stand there while Mary belittled me and you said nothing?" "I know. I see that now and I hate myself for it. I don't want to be the kind of husband who makes you feel alone, Emma. Then prove it. Words aren't enough. I will. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to earn your trust back. I sighed, crossing my arms as I leaned against the dresser. I hope you mean that, John. For now, I need space. I understand. Take all the time you need, but please, don't shut me out completely. He stood and moved toward the door, pausing to glance back. I love you, Emma. I didn't respond, turning my attention back to my suitcase. A part of me still cared deeply for him, but my heart was too heavy to say it back. Later that day, Linda hugged me tightly before I left. Remember, Emma, you'll always have a place here. Thank you, Linda. John stood by the car as I climbed in, looking uncertain. Take care, Emma. I nodded, then drove away without looking back. Back in New York, I threw myself into work, finding solace in the routine. John texted often, but I kept my replies brief, unsure of how to move forward. Over time, his messages shifted from apologetic to earnest, detailing his efforts to change. He even mentioned scheduling couples therapy, asking if I'd be open to joining him. Weeks later, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a handwritten letter from John and a photo album of our happiest moments together. The letter ended with a single line. Emma, I want to build new memories with you, better ones. Please give me that chance. Clutching the letter, I felt my resolve waver. For the first time in weeks, I considered the possibility of rebuilding. The next evening, I picked up the phone and called John. Emma? Hi, John. The line went quiet for a moment, anticipation hanging between us. It's good to hear your voice. How are you? I'm okay. I think we should talk. I like that. When can I see you? We agreed to meet at a small cafe near my apartment the following weekend. The morning of the meeting, I arrived at the cafe early, my heart pounding as I sipped a cup of coffee. The familiar hum of the city buzzed outside, but inside, I felt a quiet tension. John walked in a few minutes later, looking a little disheveled but hopeful. Hi, Emma. Hi. Have a seat. He sat across from me, his hands fidgeting slightly as he looked into my eyes. Thanks for meeting me. Thanks for reaching out. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before speaking. John, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about what happened. The reunion, Mary, everything. I've never felt so small, so ignored as I did that night. And honestly, it's made me question a lot about our relationship. I know, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. I failed you, Emma. I wasn't the partner you needed, and I hate that I hurt you. His words sounded sincere, but I was still cautious. It's more than just that night, John. It's about how I felt unseen, like I was just there, not your equal. You're absolutely right. I've been reflecting on everything and I know I need to change. Not just for you, but for myself. I've started therapy on my own to figure out why I let things get to this point. His admission surprised me, softening the wall I've built around myself. Therapy? That's a good step. I've also reached out to Mary. I told her that the way she acted and how I let her was unacceptable. I made it clear that she crossed the line, and I won't allow her to disrespect you or us again. I blinked, caught off guard. This wasn't the passive John I'd seen at the reunion. That's good to hear. But John, rebuilding trust isn't easy. It takes time and it takes more than just words. I understand that, Emma. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. And I want us to go to therapy together, to rebuild what we've lost. His words hung in the air as I studied his face, searching for sincerity. I'm not promising anything, John, but I'll think about it. That's all I can ask for. Thank you. We finished our coffee in relative silence, the weight of the conversation lingering between us. As we left the cafe, John walked me to the subway station, keeping a respectful distance. "Take care, Emma." "You too." Watching him walk away, I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. The road ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Over the next few weeks, John's actions began to match his words. He scheduled couples therapy, attended every session on time, and listened attentively. He also made changes in his daily life, prioritizing our communication, setting boundaries with friends, and showing me I was his priority. Slowly, I started to let my guard down, though I remained cautious. One pivotal moment came during a dinner at Linda's house. It's so nice to have everyone together again. The dinner was pleasant until an unexpected guest arrived, Mary. "Oh, what a coincidence. I didn't know you'd all be here tonight." The room grew tense as Mary tried to charm her way into the conversation. "John, remember that summer we went to the lake with everyone? Those were such good times, weren't they?" Before I could say anything, John spoke up firmly but calmly. "Mary, I think we should focus on the present. Emma and I are building a life together, and that's what matters now." Mary looked taken aback, but didn't press further. I glanced at John, a small smile tugging at my lips. For the first time, I felt truly seen. After dinner, as we walked home, I couldn't help but reflect on the moment. "You handled that well tonight, John. Thank you. It's the least I could do, Emma. You deserve to feel respected and supported." His words felt genuine, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of ease in his company. Over the next several months, we continued to work on our relationship, attending therapy together and communicating more openly than ever before. While the pain of the reunion still lingered, it no longer defined us. It became a turning point, a reminder of the importance of partnership and mutual respect. One quiet evening, as we sat on the couch together, John reached for my hand. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, Emma." "Thank you for earning it." Life wasn't perfect, but it felt real. We faced challenges, as all couples do, but our bond grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, as we prepared to dinner together in our small but cozy apartment, John looked over at me. "I've been thinking about something." "Oh, what is it?" "Us. Our future. Everything we've been through." "That sounds serious. What's on your mind?" "No matter how hard things get, I know I want to face them with you. Always." His words warmed my heart, and I smiled softly. "I feel the same way, John. We've been through so much, and I'm proud of how far we've come." He stepped closer, taking my hands in his. "I know I've made mistakes, but I'm determined to never let you feel alone again. And I'll do my best to always communicate, to trust, and to let you in." Our conversation was interrupted by the buzz of my phone on the counter. It was a message from Linda, John's mother. "Just wanted to say how proud I am of both of you. You've shown what it means to fight for love." "Look at this message from your mom. She's been amazing through all of this." "She really has. We're lucky to have her." After dinner, we sat together on the couch, talking about the future. "What do you think about traveling more? Maybe saving up for a trip next year?" "Oh, that sounds wonderful. I've always wanted to see Europe." "Europe it is, then. We'll make it happen." That evening, we planned our dream trip, filling the room with excitement and possibility. The wounds of the past no longer weighed us down, and the future felt brighter than it had in years. On a sunny spring morning a few months later, we stood at the airport, bags in hand, ready to embark on our first trip together since renewing our vows. As the plane ascended, I looked out the window, watching the clouds roll by. They felt like a symbol of the challenges we had overcome. I turned to John, who was watching me with a gentle smile. "What's on your mind?" "Just how lucky I feel." "I'm the lucky one, Emma." His hand found mine, our fingers intertwining as the plane carried us forward. Not just to a new destination, but to a future filled with love, trust, and partnership.
Invited to my son's new home, D says foods for family only, so I left the family behind.
I prepared hors d'oeuvres only for the family. Natasha, the daughter-in-law, had a malicious smile on her face. The portions on the table were clearly meant for 2 fewer people. Oh, what do you mean by family? I couldn't understand and reflexively asked. You're so slow to understand, aren't you? It means that you two are not family. To think people like you, so uncouth, consider yourselves family, it's an insult. There's no time left. Leave this house and don't come back. With that, my husband and I were practically pushed out of the house. Walking back silently the way we came, my husband eventually muttered, "Maybe it's enough already." Yes, I think so too. We decided to comply with Natasha's wishes. The inner conflict of how we were being treated seemed to melt away. Natasha's idealized life would soon crumble into pieces. My name is Hannah James. I am 48 years old and live with my husband, Ryan, who is 2 years older than me. Our son, Paul, left home 8 years ago when he got married. To me, Paul's wife, Natasha, was someone I could not fully connect with, despite being a family member. Natasha, who had worked as an office worker after graduating, became a housewife after getting married. From our perspective, Natasha always came across as a bit rigid. Though we met her multiple times, her behavior never showed any vulnerability. Paul, on the other hand, was academically gifted but had a calm and relaxed personality. I felt like their personalities complemented each other. One day, we were informed by Natasha and Paul that they had something important to discuss. "Hannah, if it's that important, don't you think they should come to us instead?" "Yeah, I think so too, but they're busy with parenting, aren't they? We have more free time, so let's go to them. Besides, we've never seen their home before." That's true. It might be a good opportunity. It was indeed our first visit to their home. We had never been invited before and had refrained from asking to visit, fearing it might be too intrusive. The apartment building in front of us was splendid, especially for a young couple. It looked like they lived a comfortable life. "Oh, welcome! Please come in." "Thank you. What a beautiful home." I wasn't just being polite. Their home was immaculate, not just because it was new, but because it was meticulously maintained. However, Paul wasn't home that day. Oh, what a shame. I was hoping to see Paul. Hiding my disappointment, I watched Natasha swiftly make coffee in the kitchen. "Here you go." The coffee she served smelled wonderful and tasted like it came from a professional cafe. Even the cups were clearly high-end, reflecting their elegant lifestyle. "Oh, this is delicious. Natasha, you're skilled at everything, aren't you?" "Paul is easygoing, so I hope he isn't causing you too much trouble." As I spoke, I stirred sugar into my coffee and placed the used spoon on the saucer. Natasha frowned. "Hannah, that's improper. You're supposed to place the coffee spoon on the inner side of the saucer, not outward. At your age, how can you not know such a simple thing?" She made a sly smile that felt mocking. Honestly, I had never paid attention to spoon replacement. Flustered, I corrected it, but Natasha often tried to fix my manners like this. Although such instances were rare, they always left a bitter taste. It's no wonder Paul turned out the way he did, being raised by someone as sloppy as you. And the way he turned out? Are you saying we caused trouble? I wouldn't say it in front of him, but I sometimes wish he had been raised with stricter discipline. I was stunned by her words. Just then, my grandson Andy came out of his room and sat next to me. Andy was dressed in brand new branded clothes, looking like a boy from a well-off family. "Grandma, thank you for coming." "Andy, go back to your room. This is adult talk." Natasha tried to send Andy away, but I was happy that my grandson seemed fond of me. "Andy, come here. Let's chat with Grandpa." "Please stop. Today's not a day for playing." Despite her scolding, Andy tried to approach me, but accidentally knocked over a coffee cup in the process. "Oh no, that's unfortunate. Do you have something I can use to clean this up?" As I was about to handle the spill, an unexpected outburst occurred. Natasha, with a terrifying expression, began to scold Andy furiously. Her shouting was so fierce that even I and my husband felt uneasy, though we weren't the ones being reprimanded. Andy stood there silently, tears brimming in his eyes, as Natasha continued to berate him. "Natasha, maybe that's enough. It wasn't intentional after all." "No, it's not enough. Mother, please stay out of our parenting. If we don't address this now, how will Andy grow up to be a proper adult? We are raising him to become a doctor. He can't afford to be careless." I was shocked to hear that they were planning for Andy to become a doctor at such a young age. It's good to support Andy's ambitions, but don't you think you can give him more time to decide his future? Time? When will that be? If we wait, his competitors will surpass him. You're too lenient, Mother. That's why Paul is just a company employee, even at a prestigious firm. Andy must surpass his father. I will create a first-class family. Natasha's firm declaration left no room for argument. Her words shocked me, but what shocked me more was her complete lack of respect for us. I tried to calm the situation, but Natasha remained defiant, insisting her way was the only right way. Eventually, Natasha sent Andy back to his room and turned to us with a serious expression. "Actually, we have an important matter to discuss. The truth is, Paul's salary isn't enough to cover our living expenses. We need to borrow some money from you." "Borrow money?" "Yes, we need $4,500. It's for Andy's tuition and extracurricular activities." "Oh, that's a lot of money." "We will pay it back someday. I promise." I hesitated, but Natasha's tone grew colder. "What kind of parents are you, refusing to help your son and grandson?" My husband and I exchanged a look and reluctantly agreed. "Fine, we'll transfer the money." Natasha's face immediately lit up. "Oh, thank you. That will be all for today. Please leave now." Her abrupt dismissal felt rude and transactional. I wanted to spend more time with Andy, but Natasha refused, citing their busy schedules. Reluctantly, we left their home. On the train ride back, we quietly discussed Natasha's behavior. Has Natasha always been this strong-willed? She's refined, but she's merciless in her words. Maybe she's so focused on raising Andy to be exceptional that she's lost sight of other things. Let's help them for now. They promised to repay it eventually. We convinced ourselves that we were doing the right thing and completed the money transfer for Natasha. However, the issue didn't end there. The next month, Natasha called again. "Hello, Mother. We need another $4,500 this month. Can you transfer it by tomorrow?" Another $4,500? By tomorrow? That's impossible." Natasha's tone immediately dropped, becoming colder. "Impossible? Mother, this is for your son and grandson. You should feel grateful that you can help." She acted as if receiving the money was her natural right. "I need to discuss this with your father." Always passing the responsibility. How immature for an adult. Over time, the requests for money became a regular occurrence, and we felt trapped. Every month, without fail, Natasha would call and demand the same amount. This is an investment in our family's future. We grew increasingly uneasy, but continued to send money, hoping it would ultimately benefit Paul and Andy. Eventually, Natasha and Paul built a new house and moved into it. Realizing that their expenses had increased, we felt that our financial support had been used effectively. Building a new house must have been necessary. I'm glad our money could help. We prepared our housewarming gift and visited their new home at the designated time, 11 a.m. Oh, what a lovely house. Congratulations, Paul and Natasha. Not knowing what else to bring, we handed Natasha an envelope of cash as a gift. "Will your parents be coming too? It's been a while since we've seen them." Natasha didn't answer directly, but instead began showing us around the house. Every room was spotless and well organized. "Oh, this is wonderful, Natasha. Andy will surely thrive here." When we arrived at the dining area, the table was adorned with lavish hors d'oeuvres. "These are from a top-tier restaurant. Only the best for our guests." "Oh, how luxurious. You're so knowledgeable about high-end places." As I counted the plates, I noticed there weren't enough for everyone. "Wait, there are 2 plates missing. Did you forget to set places for us?" Natasha smirked. "The hors d'oeuvres are only for our family." What do you mean by that?" "Isn't it obvious? You're not family. Don't come to someone else's house expecting a free meal. Your role is to send money and that's all." Her words were harsh and stung deeply. How could you say such a thing? It's insulting for people like you to call yourselves family. Please leave immediately." Shocked and hurt, we left the house without saying much more. On the way home, my husband broke the silence. "That's enough. Don't you agree?" "Yes, I do." We decided that we could no longer comply with Natasha's demands. If she didn't consider us family, then there was no reason to continue sending money. The next day, my husband and I resolved to stop all financial support. For years, we had felt like mere money providers, not true family. We had given so much, even dipping into our retirement savings, but it was never enough. The realization that we were not considered family brought a strange sense of relief. We felt liberated from the guilt and obligation that had weighed on us. Over time, the atmosphere in our home improved dramatically. We could finally focus on our own needs and enjoy the simple pleasures of life. About a month later, our doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened the door, Natasha was standing there. "Natasha, what brings you here?" Without waiting for an invitation, Natasha pushed past us and entered the living room. She sat on the sofa, crossed her legs, and spoke in a commanding tone. "This month's transfer hasn't come through yet. That's because we've decided to stop." Natasha's eyes widened in shock before narrowing into an accusatory glare. "How could you make such a decision on your own? Cutting off support means cutting ties with Paul and Andy. Do you understand what that means?" Her words were biting, but we stood firm. "Do you remember what you said at your housewarming? That we're not family?" If that's how you feel, then there's no reason for us to continue helping you. Oh, that's not the same. You're the ones who are supposed to send money. It's your only purpose. Her words were so outrageous that we couldn't help but feel disgusted. $4,500 is necessary for our family's success. You're just hoarding money you don't need. At this point, my husband, usually calm and quiet, intervened. Enough, Natasha. We've had enough of your arrogance and disrespect. You treated us like outsiders, yet demanded our money as if it were your right. You just don't understand. Everything I do is for Andy's future. Even so, your lifestyle is unsustainable. You've been using our money for unnecessary luxuries, haven't you? Natasha averted her eyes, but her silence spoke volumes. Just then, the front door opened and Paul entered. What's going on here? He looked at the tension in the room and frowned. Paul, did you know we've been sending $4,500 to Natasha every month? What? No, I didn't. I thought her parents were helping us out a bit, but I had no idea it was this much. Where did all that money go, Natasha? Natasha remained silent, her face pale. I've been giving you money from my salary too, and you still needed more? We thought the money was going toward Andy's education and household expenses. But now I wonder how much of it was spent on unnecessary extravagances. Paul's expression darkened as he pieced everything together. Natasha, explain yourself. It's all for Andy. He deserves the best, doesn't he? Paul shook his head in disbelief. You've been using Andy as an excuse for your own selfish desires. I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. The confrontation grew heated, but Natasha could no longer maintain her composure. In the end, Paul made a decision. That's it, Natasha. I can't do this anymore. We're getting a divorce. Andy stays with me. A divorce? You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. I can't let you continue this madness. Andy deserves better. You're just going to throw everything away? What about our family? Family? You've been treating my parents like nothing more than ATMs. That's not family. Natasha started to shout in desperation, but Paul was resolute. I'll be taking Andy. I can't trust you to raise him properly anymore. Natasha turned to me and my husband, tears streaming down her face. You two are the cause of this. Why didn't you just keep sending them money? Natasha, this isn't about money. It's about your behavior and attitude. You took advantage of everyone around you, including your own child. Natasha glared at us, but there was nothing more she could say. Paul walked over and handed her a piece of paper. Here's the divorce form. We'll submit it today. Natasha, defeated, sank into the sofa. She muttered something under her breath, but we couldn't make it out. A few hours later, Paul, Andy, my husband, and I were at the local government office. The divorce papers were signed and filed. Natasha moved out of their home shortly after. Paul decided to stay in the house with Andy and focus on raising him in a simpler, more supportive environment. I've transferred Andy to a public school. The private school wasn't the right fit for him, and the expenses were unsustainable. He's also dropped most of his extracurricular activities, keeping only the ones he truly enjoys. That sounds like a wonderful plan. Andy will flourish with less pressure. Andy seemed happier than ever, running around our garden with a soccer ball. Grandma, Grandpa, look! I'm getting good at juggling the ball. Oh, that's wonderful, Andy. I want to be a soccer player when I grow up. Have you told your mom that? No, she always got upset whenever I mentioned it. Well, you can say whatever you like now. Follow your dreams. Andy's face lit up, and he nodded eagerly. My husband, who had been quietly watching, stepped forward. Come on, Andy. Let's see what you've got. Don't overdo it, dear. I'm still young enough to keep up. Watching them play together filled me with joy. Our home felt peaceful again, and we were looking forward to watching Andy grow up in a supportive and happy environment.
Mom's gift watch gone, husband. Gave it to my sister. Me? I'm done. Leaving with my daughter, a bang echoed.
Oh, that watch? I gave it to my sister. What's the point of you keeping it? It's a waste. What are you talking about? My heart nearly stops. The watch my mother chose for me, a treasure I've cherished for 10 years. My mind goes blank, and I can't think for a moment. I stand there, stunned, unable to comprehend this surreal and cruel reality. Michael looks down at me, smirking as he exhales a deep sigh. His eyes hold a cruelty I've never seen before, like he's crushing an insect beneath his shoe. The tender gaze he once showed me when he proposed is long gone. I collapse to my knees, trembling hands clutching at my chest, my heart pounding painfully. See? There you go again, playing the victim. He lights a cigarette, smirking, and intentionally blows the smoke in my direction. His every action seems designed to break me down. My mother once wrapped that watch around my wrist on the eve of my wedding. With this, you'll mark happy times. Her warmth is something I'll never feel again. You're so pathetic, Sarah. Clinging to a sentimental trinket like that at your age? Don't you know it's useless? My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 34 years old. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own. Life was hard, and I grew up watching her work tirelessly. Even when she came home exhausted, she would prepare dinner for us, her face pale and weary. I vowed to become financially independent and build a better life. Right after high school, I started working at a high-end department store in the cosmetics section. Though I was just a retail worker, people admired me for being employed at such a prestigious place. I still remember the joy of receiving my first paycheck. That night, I bought fresh tuna, Mom's favorite, and we celebrated together. 5 years into my job, my mother suggested something to me. There's someone I'd like you to meet. A friend of mine knows a wonderful man. Would you like to meet him? Working in the cosmetics department, I had no opportunities to meet men. Curious and open to the idea, I agreed. I met Michael at a local Italian restaurant. In a private booth, he greeted me with a nervous smile. I didn't expect to meet someone so amazing. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not used to places like this either. I laughed when he joked about wanting to grab a beer at a local pub afterward. His down-to-earth nature made me feel an instant connection. 6 years later, we had a beautiful daughter, Emma, who's now 5 years old. I wanted to give Emma the same love and care my mother gave me. Mommy, all my friends are going to theme parks. Can we go too? Emma's face brightened with hope every time she asked, even though Michael always prioritized his camping trips. Michael, who grew up with wealthy but emotionally distant parents, never truly valued family time. Despite his well-paid job, I noticed our expenses rising as Emma grew older. Michael's response was always dismissive. Don't worry about it. Just cut back on spending. Ultimately, I had to go back to work at the department store to cover the mortgage payments. Meanwhile, Michael continued spending extravagantly on his hobbies, leaving me to manage the household alone. One weekend, as I cleaned up after his latest camping trip, I found a lipstick-stained cup among his gear. When I confronted him, he brushed it off. It's probably from someone's wife. Why do you always overthink things? His dismissive attitude made me feel insignificant. Michael's camping trips left me with an enormous mess to clean. Sand-filled tents, dirty dishes, and scattered supplies cluttered our entryway. I eventually decided to stop cleaning up after him. For 3 weeks, the gear stayed where it was until Michael tossed it all into his study out of frustration. On top of Michael's selfishness, I also had to deal with his sister, Marie. Marie, 2 years younger than me, was spoiled and self-centered. After being kicked out of her parents' house for freeloading, she moved into an apartment near us. Weekends became a nightmare as Marie showed up with bags of laundry. "Here's my laundry. I'll pick it up Sunday night. Thanks." She would drop off 2 full bags, leaving me to sort and wash them in multiple loads. Our washer was constantly occupied, leaving me unable to do my own laundry. Despite having a washer in her apartment and passing laundromats on the way to our house, she always came to us. Even worse, Marie would show up unannounced on weeknights. She and Michael would laugh loudly in the kitchen, disturbing the peace of my evening. "What's for dinner, Sarah? I'm starving." Her tone was entitled, treating me like her personal chef. One evening, I warmed up leftovers, hoping to avoid cooking more. "Is this it? No meat? Cook me some steak." My patience snapped, but before I could respond, Michael chimed in. "She's my sister, Sarah. Just cook her what she wants. It's not that hard." Reluctantly, I began cooking, biting back tears of frustration. When the steak was ready, Marie took one bite and grimaced. "Ugh, what is this? Cheap meat?" She spat it out onto her plate, making me feel humiliated. Michael handed her barbecue sauce from the fridge without hesitation. The stark difference in how he treated her and me was unbearable. As they laughed together, I overheard Marie ask for money. "I'm short on cash this month. Can you help me out?" "Of course, sis. You deserve it." I couldn't believe my ears. We were struggling to pay our mortgage, yet he had money to give her. Marie claimed to be an influencer, yet her social media presence barely had 36 followers. She spent excessively on clothes, justifying it as a necessity for her brand. My frustration grew, but I bottled it up for the sake of peace. Then came the incident with my mother's watch. One morning, I went to retrieve it from my drawer, but it was gone. I searched everywhere, panic rising as I realized it was missing. This watch was an heirloom, passed down from my grandmother to my mother and then to me. It symbolized love, resilience, and the hope of building a happy home. I confronted Michael, desperately asking if he had seen it. "Michael, do you know where my watch is?" "Oh, that old thing. I gave it to Marie." My blood ran cold. Why would you do that? It's not just a watch, it's a family heirloom." "Marie wanted it. What's the big deal? I'll buy you another one." I couldn't contain my anger any longer. "Go get it back now." "No way, she's my sister, and she deserves it." His blatant disregard for my feelings shattered any remaining trust I had. At that moment, I made up my mind. I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. Michael froze, his face a mix of shock and disbelief. Michael's disbelief quickly turned to anger. "Divorce? Oh, don't be ridiculous. You can't survive without me. You don't even make enough money." He laughed bitterly, mocking my ability to stand on my own. But I stood firm. I'd rather struggle than live like this. I went to my daughter's room to pack our things. "Emma, sweetheart, we're going to Grandma's house for a little while." "Did I do something wrong? Is it my fault?" Her wide, tearful eyes broke my heart. "No, honey, you didn't do anything wrong. Mommy just needs your help finding something at Grandma's." I hugged her tightly, silently vowing to protect her from this chaos. Emma beamed, showing me a paper watch she had crafted from colored paper and crayons. "I made you a new magic watch, Mommy." Tears filled my eyes as I slipped it on my wrist. "It's perfect. Thank you, Emma. Now let's get our things and go." As we gathered our belongings, Michael watched from the doorway. "You're really leaving? Over a stupid watch?" "It's not just the watch. It's everything. Goodbye, Michael." Holding Emma's hand, I walked out the door and didn't look back. As we reached the street, a loud bang startled us. I turned to see smoke pouring out of the house. Flames quickly engulfed the building as neighbors ran out to call the fire department. Michael stumbled out, coughing and covered in soot. Emergency responders arrived, extinguishing the blaze, but the house was a total loss. Later, investigators confirmed the fire had started in Michael's study, where he'd carelessly stored his camping equipment. They determined he had been smoking near flammable materials, causing a deadly explosion. Thankfully, Emma and I were safe. I moved in with my mother while Michael recovered in the hospital. News of the fire and the divorce spread quickly, and whispers filled the neighborhood. Michael's sister Marie continued to demand help from me, showing up at my mother's house uninvited. "Marie, I can't help you. I have my own problems to deal with." "Ugh, you're so selfish. What kind of sister-in-law are you?" Despite her insults, I refused to let her manipulate me any longer. Meanwhile, Michael's actions began to catch up with him. Social media exploded with revelations about his behavior. His infidelity, recklessness, and mistreatment of me and Emma became public knowledge. His reputation, along with Marie's, was utterly destroyed. Their lives unraveled as Michael struggled with debt, and Marie lost her job after being exposed for her online lies. With the divorce finalized, I gained full custody of Emma. I found a small apartment and began rebuilding our lives. Emma's smile, once dimmed by the chaos, grew brighter each day. "Emma, no matter what, we have each other, and that's all we need." Emma hugged me tightly, her paper watch still on my wrist. Together we began our journey toward a happier, more peaceful life. I stared at the scene in disbelief, feeling the heavy weight of the betrayal sinking in. "You filthy outsider, get out of here. I never want to see your disgusting face again." With venom in her voice, she hurled the contents of a salt bowl directly at me, the grains cascading down my head and shoulders. The world seemed to freeze as I stood there paralyzed and humiliated, the salt trickling down like icy tears. My husband sat a few feet away, staring intently at his phone, utterly indifferent to the chaos unfolding around him. This was his mother's funeral, yet he acted as if I were invisible, as if the insults aimed at me were none of his concern. 13 years ago, my life had changed drastically when my mother-in-law suffered a debilitating stroke. From that moment on, I took on her care entirely: hospital stays, rehabilitation, and round-the-clock in-home care. Even sleepless nights spent helping her with basic needs were worth it for the small moments when she smiled and said, "Thank you." "Thank you, Catherine. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far." Those words had kept me going. They reminded me of the bond we shared, one built on mutual respect and love. But today, standing at her funeral, facing the vile words and actions of her daughter and the apathy of my husband, I couldn't help but wonder, had my years of dedication meant nothing? I clenched my fists, determined not to let tears fall, and bowed my head in an effort to contain my emotions. Then, as I turned to leave, her voice cut through the tension. "Where do you think you're going? You're not done here." I froze and turned slowly, my mind racing. My role as the caregiver had ended, yet here I was, treated as nothing more than a disposable servant. That night after the funeral, I couldn't shake the sting of their words. 13 years of sacrifices and devotion reduced to a single moment of utter disrespect. I returned home that evening, feeling the crushing weight of exhaustion and humiliation. The house was eerily silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My husband was in the living room, once again glued to his phone. "Michael, can we talk?" "About what? I'm busy." His tone was dismissive, and he didn't even glance up. "About today, about your sister, and what she said at the funeral. You're overreacting. She didn't mean it." The casual shrug of his shoulders made my blood boil. "Overreacting? She poured salt on me and screamed at me to leave. You just sat there." "Look, Catherine, I have enough on my plate. I'm not going to get in the middle of your drama with my sister." "Drama? 13 years of caring for your mother was not drama." I walked away realizing that any further conversation was pointless. The next morning, I found a small envelope tucked into my bedside drawer. It was Emma's handwriting. Inside was a note, short and simple. "Catherine, thank you for everything. You've been my greatest blessing. Keep this letter close. It's my final wish." My eyes welled up with tears as I held the note. I didn't know how, but her words gave me the strength to get through the coming days. 2 weeks after the funeral, Michael and his sister gathered all the family for a meeting. I've consulted with a lawyer, and as her son, I'm entitled to the majority of Mom's estate. And I should get my fair share too. Catherine doesn't deserve anything. Their greed was on full display. "Your mother left a will. It clearly states her wishes." "Oh, we'll see about that," he smirked, clearly ready to contest anything that didn't benefit him. I produced the letter my mother-in-law had given me. Reading her exact words aloud, the room fell silent. She left everything to her grandson. Not to you, not to your sister. Their faces contorted with disbelief and anger. That's not fair. She didn't know what she was doing when she wrote that. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted her legacy to be with someone who would honor her, not exploit her. Michael slammed his fist on the table. "I'll fight this. I have a right to what's mine." A cousin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Michael, sit down. Catherine took care of Aunt Emma for 13 years. What did you do?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. I stood firm, clutching the letter tightly. The truth was on my side, and I would honor her wishes, no matter the cost. The family meeting ended with Michael and his sister storming out, clearly furious and vowing to contest the will. I sat alone in the quiet room, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The days that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings with attorneys. Michael's threats to contest the will became real when he filed a legal challenge, claiming undue influence on his mother. I knew I had to be prepared for a fight, not just for myself, but for my son and to honor my mother-in-law's wishes. Meanwhile, the truth about Michael's infidelity and his sister's death began to surface among the extended family. Their once neutral stance shifted, and they rallied behind me, offering support and validation for all I had endured. My son Daniel stood by my side throughout it all, becoming my pillar of strength. "Mom, we're going to get through this together. Grandma believed in you, and so do I." His words reminded me why I was fighting so hard. The court case dragged on for months, filled with accusations, counter-arguments, and a relentless determination from Michael. However, the evidence was clear. The will was valid, and Emma's intentions were unmistakable. During the final hearing, my attorney presented the letter my mother-in-law had written to me, which proved her mental clarity. This letter, written in her own hand, expresses her gratitude to Catherine and her desire for her grandson to inherit. The courtroom was silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. "The will is upheld. All assets will be transferred to the beneficiary named in the document." Michael and his sister were visibly stunned, their faces pale as the judge's decision sank in. Outside the courtroom, Daniel embraced me tightly. "We did it, Mom. Grandma's legacy is safe." Tears streamed down my face as I held him, finally feeling the weight of years of sacrifice and struggle lifting. Michael's and his sister's lives began to unravel after the court's decision. Michael was left with mounting debts and no assets to his name, forced to move into a small apartment. His sister's financial woes worsened as creditors pursued her relentlessly. They had both gambled everything on greed and deceit, only to lose it all. Meanwhile, Daniel and I began to rebuild our lives. "Mom, I want you to live here with us. You've done so much for everyone. It's time for you to have peace." His invitation brought me a sense of belonging and purpose. Moving in with Daniel and his new wife was the start of a new chapter. Their kindness and respect reminded me of the love Emma had always shown me. One day, Daniel's wife suggested something that sparked a new dream for me. "Catherine, with all your experience, have you thought about becoming a caregiver professionally?" The idea intrigued me, and with their encouragement, I decided to pursue certification as a caregiver. The process was challenging but rewarding, as I found a new sense of purpose in helping others. My past hardships became a source of strength and compassion, guiding me in my new career. As time passed, Daniel and his wife built a happy home filled with laughter and love. I often thought of my mother-in-law and the lessons she had taught me about resilience, kindness, and family. Thank you, Emma, for everything. Your love continues to guide me. Each day as I worked to create a better future, I felt her presence, reminding me that I was never truly alone.